Perfect. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Town of Greater Napanee regular session of council for the 26th day of September 2023. I'm just going to remind everybody that this evening's meeting is being recorded and live streamed to our Town of Greater Napanee YouTube channel. And tonight is somewhat of an inaugural night, is that we've instituted some new headings and some new policies with respect to our procedural bylaws. So you may notice a little bit of a difference in our meeting tonight. So everybody that's watching and everybody that's here tonight, just bear with us and we'll get through it. But I think it will make for a better meeting in the long run. So having said that, we'll start with the closed session. We were in closed session earlier this evening, and I'd like to do the rise and report from closed session. So I'll look for a motion to rise and report from closed session. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calvary, seconded by Councillor Norrie. All in favor of that motion? If there's no questions, comments, concerns, opposed, motion's carried. I'd like to report that in closed session tonight, council approved the closed session minutes from September 12th, 2023, received 2 reports regarding the potential disposition of land and gave direction to staff, and received a report regarding negotiations to be carried out on by the municipality and gave direction to staff. Having said that, we'll also look for a motion coming out of closed session with respect to the sale of 1113 Market Square. So we'll look for a mover and a seconder with respect to that. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. And the motion is that council authorize staff to accept the offer for the purchase of 1113 Market Square as presented in confidential staff report SR 303-2023. And further, council direct that such sale be finalized by bylaw passed in an open meeting at the soonest possible date. We have a mover and a seconder, motion on the floor. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks. Look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Shank, second by Councillor Purnell. That's the adoption of the agenda for the this evening's meeting, regular session of council dated the 26th day of September 2023. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Presentations. We'll start the evening with presentations, and I think we have a presentation from the Quinte Conservation Locally Supported Services Agreement. Mr. McNevin, Brad, come on up and the floor will be yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Richardson and council for allowing me an opportunity to come and talk to you. Quinte Conservation is a conservation authority across Ontario. I provided some information in your package about what we do. I'm not going to go through all that information. If you have specific questions about any of those items, I'm certainly here to answer. The primary purpose of my visit tonight is Conservation Authorities Act was changed over the last couple of years. And part of those changes is all conservation authorities are required to enter into an agreement with their municipal partners. So Quinte Conservation has 18 different municipalities that we have a partnership with. So we have to have agreements with them to offer what we consider, or what the Act identifies as Category 2 and Category 3 programs and services. So within the Town of Greater Napanee, we have both Category 2 and Category 3 programs and services. Things like risk management official services that we provide to the municipality for protection of your municipal drinking water system. So we have a special agreement with the municipality. We've had that in place for approximately 5 years or so, maybe even longer, to provide those service. That's an example of a Category 2. When we get into Category 3 programs and services, there are things like water quality and quantity monitoring that we do to ensure the water is healthy within this jurisdiction, within the Napanee region. But we look at it holistically. Quinte Conservation is all of Prince Edward County, all the Napanee region, which includes the Napanee River watershed, the Salmon River watershed, and all of the Moira River watershed. So that's the sort of the nature. I provided an example or a draft agreement that we would like to get finalized. We do have a due date that the province has placed on us for the end of this year. All of these agreements have to be in place. So one of the things that that I did with I went with my partner bordering agency on the west of my boundary because we share a lot of municipalities, but we had this agreement sort of reviewed by Templeman Meninga, who a lot of our municipalities deal with for legal advice, simply because we wanted it to be a friendly agreement. It just spells out covering the municipality and the Conservation Authority from a technical ability, but the appendix of that agreement is basically, it outlines the services that are covered under the agreement for each municipality. We look at all our category 3 programs are benefiting to all of our watershed. We don't do specific things in any one municipality for the category 3 because we look at the entire watershed as a whole, as a unit, to make sure that what happens upstream, we know impacts what happens downstream. So let's look at it as all one unit. All of our watersheds drain into the Bay of Quinte, with the exception of portions of Prince Edward County. They drain directly into Lake Ontario. But so, as an agency looking at water quality and quantity health, the Bay of Quinte receives all that water. So let's look at it from a holistic view of the entire watershed. That's in a nutshell what I'm here for, and I would love to entertain any questions that you might have.
Yep, thanks, Brad. I appreciate that. Is there any questions or comments for Brad with respect to his presentation orally or the presentation that we received electronically? Seeing none. I think you got off easy tonight, Brad. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And
I appreciate the time.
Sure, not in the not too distant future, we'll probably see that agreement come before us. Am I correct, Madam Clerk? It's on tonight's agenda. Sorry, I missed it. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we'll look for a motion to note and receive the presentation, I'm guessing, Madam Clerk. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, Brad. Muchly appreciate it. Absolutely. You're more than welcome to stick around. Sometimes it can get rather riveting here. So next up, we have a scheduled deputation, new items, and we have Marnie Dawson on behalf of Boralex. Come on up, Marnie. And I know this is probably your first attendance here. Am I correct?
Yes. Well, it's been a very long time since I've been here.
Okay, yeah. So we just ask you to, both the microphones are on there, and it would just ask you to speak as directly into the microphones as possible, just so the folks at home can hear us. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us, Mayor, councillors, and staff. So we're here tonight to present on our project. So it's called the Lennox Battery Energy Storage Project. I know we only have 10 minutes, so I'll actually go through the slides fairly quickly. I'm going to make the assumption, because I know there have been other developers that have come forward, that you know the basics of battery storage. So I'm going to skip all those slides, but if you want me to go back to them, just please let me know and I can go over those in details, but I'll just kind of focus on us and the project. So Boralex is a Canadian company. We originated in Quebec. We're actually, we started from Cascades pulp and paper mill. And from there, pulp and paper actually requires a lot of energy. So they started up a kind of energy division and then split off from there. And that started Boralex. So we currently have over 3,000 megawatts installed. We have operations in Canada, the US, France, and the United Kingdom now. And of that as well, the majority of our projects are wind power projects. We are 100% renewable. We do have solar and also battery installed as well. So of the 3,000, or in addition to the 3,000, we also have over 6 gigawatts of projects in development. And those are the same in Canada, US, France, and the United Kingdom. We're focused here tonight on the Lennox Battery Energy Storage Project. Our recent highlights are, in particular, The ISO had a call last year. I think you're familiar with it with the Atura project, that battery that won. We also won 2 projects. We won the Hagersville project, which was a 300 megawatt project, and a Tilbury project, which is our 80 megawatt project. We've also won a bunch of projects recently in the United States, in New York that are solar with battery associated with it, and then a big wind power project in Quebec. I'm assuming, again, you know about the ISO's process, so I will just talk about what's happening right now. So the ISO is holding their second procurement, which is called the long-term 1 or LT1 procurement. They're looking to procure 1,600 megawatts of battery and a total of 2,500 megawatts of capacity. The remaining will come from natural gas. And like I said, the 1,600 megawatts will come from battery. In the first round, they did not get all the natural gas that they wanted. So there is the ability for the ISO to procure in addition to that 1,600 megawatts. Here's the draft timeline from the ISO. This is somewhat important because, again, they're doing a very tight timeline. They just let us know on the 18th of September if there was capacity on the lines for a project, which we found out there was, and we have to submit by December the 12th. So it's a very, very tight turnaround to get these projects going. I'm going to skip over this because I'm assuming everybody kind of has the basics on battery storage, but can go back. So one of the reasons why we chose the site that we did was, one, specifically the land use. So the site currently is agricultural, but it's also zoned for solar generation. So that very much appealed to us. The other thing with this site is that we would be far away from the neighbors, that at the back of the property where we're thinking of developing the project, it's a kilometer away from any of the nearest neighbors. And there's also a lot of shielding from trees and natural sources. So that was also very appealing to us with regards to the project. And then also with regards to the Lennox generating station, the fact that it is, its contract is expiring in 2029 makes it a great spot for battery storage. So here's our site. So as you know, we've been working with the Windover family. We've come to an agreement and we have an option and lease on their property. And the bright green there is where we're proposing to have the batteries themselves. There'll be an access road that goes down to Highway 33. And then the interconnection line is something else that we'd also are talking to the township about. We're interested in using the unopened road allowance for our interconnection line to take us over to the existing 230 Hydro 1 lines. So the project will be 400 megawatts in total, or up to 400 megawatts, and will take approximately up to 22 acres. So our timeline, as I said, we submit in December. Up until that point, this project really is just a prospect. In Q1, Q2, the ISO will let all proponents know whether they've won a project or not. And so at that point, if we happen to win the project, which we hope we do, we would then be moving forward and we would have open houses again to keep the local community informed of the project, and then meet with council again and staff to work through all the agreements that would be required and all the permits that would be required for the project at that point in time. I'll skip these ones. The big thing that we want to talk about is fire safety. We know this is an issue with a lot of concerns are associated with fire and battery storage projects. So we like to get ahead of it right from the very beginning. We are not the specialists, and so we hire a specialist to come help us out with our project. So if we are awarded a project, we would hire the specialist to come in and work with staff, your local fire department, to come up with fire safety management plans for the facility, as well as emergency response plans as well. And of course, the batteries would follow all the required safety protocols that are currently in place. Benefits. So battery storage, there really is not a lot of full-time jobs associated with battery storage, unfortunately, but during construction time, there are quite a few jobs that would be required. We do procure all materials or the majority of our materials locally for our projects. So we would be looking to do that for this project as well. And then in addition, we provide a community vibrancy fund for all of our projects as well, in addition to sponsorships and other things and other fundings that we do. So our ask tonight is for a municipal support resolution for our project. We will be having, or we are hosting, an open house on Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m. We invite council and staff to attend that open house if you want to. What we also do is, if council would like to attend early, we open the doors early for council so that you can have kind of a more in-depth conversations with us without your constituents there. So you're fully prepared to answer any questions when your constituents do arrive. And we invite you to stay for the whole evening if you're able to as well. So that's everything from us, and we're open for questions.
Great, thanks, Marnie. Very well done. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns for Marnie with respect to this project? Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, Marnie, thank you very much for the presentation. Just have a question for you. You said that the project would be about 1 kilometer away from the highway. Whose responsibility to make sure that that road is maintained and cleared for emergencies?
That would be our responsibility, and we would hire some local contractor to ensure that that road is cleared at all times.
Thank you. And just to follow up with that, he knows it's coming. All right.
I'm ready, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Chief. Actually, this is for the deputy. No, I'm just joking. Welcome, Deputy Chief. Just wanted to know if you had a chance to look at this project, and with it being so far off of the road, if fire has any issues with this project at all.
Through the chair, your worship, I have looked at the project as we have in the past, looked at all the other projects that have come before us. Fire has no issues with the creation, maintenance, or operation of this battery storage project.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilor Pennell. Is there any other questions or comments? Yep, go ahead, Councilor Shank.
My only question is the open house is going to be at South Fredericksburg?
That's correct.
No, I'm well aware of what's going on, how it's going, and we'll see you Thursday.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Shank. You took the first question I had, but I just wanted to make you folks aware that the research that I've been able to do on it is it's a pretty professional outfit, pretty professional plan that's going to be presented, and I'm pretty impressed with it. So thank you for doing that. And unfortunately, I won't be at the open house. I have another previous commitment, but thank you for all the work that you've done on this, and I'm sure we'll see you soon. Is there anything else? Seeing nothing, we have a recommendation that council note and receive the deputation from Boralex, and further that council direct that a staff report regarding the request for a municipal support resolution be brought back to the October 10th meeting for consideration. Moved by Councilor Shank, seconded by Councilor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks again, folks, and we'll probably see you on the 10th, I'm thinking. So
Thank you very much. And aside, we can send comments that we received from the open house. We'll do a summary and can send them around to everybody as well.
and we appreciate that. I think that might be very helpful for us. Thank you very much. Oh, hold on. Councilor Shank has one more question.
Just so you're well prepared, is as you can see the transmission line that's going across all the property. But of course, there's there are other landowners, all right, that are along there. They're going to have grave concerns of, all right, tiling, all right, the road access, who's access to, just so you're well prepared for Thursday, that if there's going to be a transmission with an unopened road allowance, you know, what's the security to my property? All right. So how you deal with that, because I very likely there will be other farmers there that will ask that same question.
Sure, and we're prepared. We'd be willing to fence off either just the entrance or the whole thing, depending on what people want, and then provide access to just us, the town, and Hydro One.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, moving on, we have deputations with respect to items on the agenda, and we have Ken Ryder here on behalf of the Calvary Church. So come on up, Ken, and the floor will be yours.
I want to thank you, your worship and council, for allowing us to present to you this evening. I'll probably go with that screen. No offense to if I turn my back on somebody here, but and I assume this works, does it? Calvary Church would like to bring forward a request to do a road closure and sale of a piece of property that's immediately behind ours. And so on the east side of our property is a road allowance that's existing there, and it's not being used. It's somewhat ancient, but for us, we would like to acquire that for allowing us to expand our property, make some changes to add another building, and I'll explain that as we go through the slides. Between us, this property exists between us and a stranded or orphan piece of property from MTO. And they had approached us a number of years ago to open dialogue around what to do with that piece of property. We are interested, we're mutually interested in creating a solution for that with MTO. And this is the first step in that process. So just a bit of a perspective aerial view orientation. You can see where we are kind of top left. MTO is in the center. You're familiar with the Gerdo steel recycling, and then CN Rail is on the bottom of that view. County Road number 1 goes around to the top. And just back it up here. So this dotted yellow line is where that road allowance exists today. And it's right adjacent, as you can see, between our property. But the purpose for us to inquire about making this sale and closure is for us to expand what we have, and we're kind of constrained with what we have in the location of our septic tank. You can see our well on the north side of the property, septic tank in the middle, and then our septic bed drains to the south. If we were to add another building, it would be only logical to put it right over top of our septic bed as it exists now. Therefore, we need to move that. And if we were to move it, it would look something like this. We would have to change the direction of the septic bed, drain it to the east, and then that allow us to build the fellowship hall on that location where the septic bed was. Somewhat limited to what we can do with that because of swampy area in the MTO property. It doesn't drain for most of the year, and so it limits the ability to use much of that property at all. And of course, part of our fellowship hall will be a daycare. We believe that that's an opportunity for us to support our community, and also it's an outreach opportunity for the church as well. That could only be located on the back end of the building, and obviously it would stretch over into both properties. We've had some initial drawings from a company of ours we're associated with, and just for the steel work, and it kind of gives us an outlay of what that building would look like. About 6,000 square feet, 60 by 100-ish, included dining hall, classrooms, and then daycare facilities. And the daycare would be obviously on the back end of that property where there's lots of space to fence and have grounds and equipment. And so that brings me to the end of the presentation. I'll leave that here, but really the request is to allow the application to move forward through the process with staff to the next steps. And of course, we and MTO, if required, will work with staff to support that process, whatever might be required to bring it to conclusion. And that's the end of my presentation.
Great, thanks, Ken. Is there any questions or comments for Ken with respect to his presentation or his deputation this evening? Go ahead, Councillor Brunel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Ken, thank you very much for coming and talking to us tonight. You're placed on the agenda with this under the category that we're going to be dealing with this a little bit later tonight. And I just wanted to ask you the question now while you're sitting here so that I could ask you directly. There's a request for you. The county would like to have some land for a future road widening. No idea when that would take place. But one of the opportunities that you might have to be able to move your project further, faster, would be if you were willing to sever off that road allowance that they're asking for now and hand that over to the town of Napanee to hang on to until the county would be ready to do any type of widening. Is this something that you'd be willing to add into your project upfront now so that you could move forward?
Yes, certainly. We're just open to whatever staff and the city would like us to do. We'll proceed whatever the recommendations are. And yes, so severing it now would expedite the project. We'd absolutely do that. We won't need that side of the property anyways. We're much interested in the other, as you can see from the diagram. So for us, that wouldn't be a problem.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, just with respect to Councillor Pennell's information there, the cost to sever that piece of property, would that be a cost that would be borne on you or the church, or is that a cost that would be borne on the municipality? Or do we know?
So through your worship, those would be costs borne by the applicant. Normally when it comes to a request to close and convey a road allowance, there is a cost for a survey built in. In this particular case, there is already a PIN on this, so it does exist as a separate legal title, and it wouldn't be necessary if it weren't for this other complication with a potential future road widening, but it is normally a cost that's borne by the applicant.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anything that come out of my question or Councillor Pennell's inquiries? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that council note and receive the deputation from Ken Ryder. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Ken. And you're more than welcome to stick around. Like Councillor Pennell said, we'll be discussing it a little later in this evening's meeting. So thank you very much. Next up is one of those new items that I mentioned at the start of this evening's meeting. It's an administrative consent agenda. And what we'll do is, I think, Madam Clerk, with your permission, we'll go through the items that are in the consent agenda, see if there's any conversations with respect to any of those things. And then we will note and receive a motion if there's nothing pertinent that has to be pulled out. Am I correct with that? Perfect. We will start with the regular session of council meeting, regular session of council minutes for September 12th, 2023. Is there anything in those minutes that council would like to pull out and have a discussion with? Seeing none. Committee minutes, Recreation Advisory, Arts Advisory, Downtown Advisory. Is there anything in those minutes that anyone would like to be pulled out and have a discussion with? Or any clarification that anybody wants from those minutes? Seeing none. Correspondence for information, items dated September 26, 2023. And I know that we've all had an opportunity to read and see those correspondence and minutes. Is there anything that anyone would like to speak to or talk to with respect to those? Seeing none. The Community and Corporate Services Activity Report. Is there anything in that activity report that anyone would like to discuss? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I have a question for Mr. Zetterberg, and it's in regards to the North Fred Sports Complex and the pickleball courts. I see that we have a delay, and I'm just wondering if there's something that can be done. Is there a holdback in our contract that we could hire another contractor to get this done? Looks like the season is slipping away from us really quick, and we've lost this year, but it'd be nice to have this done before the snow flies. Is there anything that can be done?
Through your worship, there is no holdback. There's no monies have gone out to that, the company from Ottawa as of, or Chemville, sorry, as of yet. They have following a phone call today. They have guaranteed they will arrive on Thursday this week. We've heard that before, but it was under no uncertain terms that we'll be looking for another contractor if they don't arrive this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there anything else with respect to that report? Seeing none, the activity report, financial services for September 2023. Is there anything in that report that anybody wants to pull out and have any discussions with? Seeing none, the activity report for the fire department, September 2023. Is there anything in that report that someone would like to speak to or make note of or discuss or need some clarification? Seeing none, the activity report for growth and expansion, September 2023. Is there anything within this report that anybody would like to speak to or discuss? Seeing none, activity report infrastructure services 2023. Is there anything within that report that someone would like to discuss or have any clarification from? Seeing none, activity report legislative services, September of 2023. Is there anything in the report from legislative services that anyone needs any clarification of or wants to speak to? Seeing none, and the final one is the Access E11 report, August 2023 stats. Is there anything in that report that anybody would like to speak to, have any clarification for with respect to the E11 report? Seeing none, so I will look to Madam Clerk. I believe that there is a motion that can be read, which is that council consent to the approval of the following routine items. Council minutes, September 12th, 2023, that the minutes of the regular session of council dated September 12th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Committee minutes, August 2023, that the draft recreation advisory, arts advisory, and downtown advisory committee minutes from July 24 to August 30th, 2023 be received for information. Correspondence for information items, that the correspondence for information items dated September 26, 2023 be received. And the activity reports, that the activity reports for community and corporate services, financial services, fire services, growth and expansion, infrastructure services, and legislative services for the month of September 2023, and the Access E11 reporting statistics for August 2023, items 7.5 through 7.11 be received for information. Sorry about that. It's kind of a long one, but moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead, Councillor Shank.
This is just a comment with all the committees that we have in the town, is that when you have because your budget process is going to be coming along, at the end of when you have a final, what worked, what didn't work in your committee, what are the needs, wishes, and wants? You know, if you tried something and it didn't work, why didn't it work? Is that the consensus, what you can do? How can we, I just want to improve things for next year when you have these committees, what worked, what didn't work? You know, was there a lack of communication or whatever it is, just so we can improve on something, just not receive the report and say, "Hi, fine, thank you," you know, and nothing gets accomplished or nothing gets, you know, you can always improve everything that we do or everything I do or whatever. And just so we can, you know, take that next step. That's all. You know, with all the, I like the process of what it's doing and what all the process it is. And like Ben's point, subdivision, that on the one that is a public meeting of what's going on, what isn't, so the public is informed of what is and what the process is, and then they can have their public, the comment also, just so everything is, I like the way the process is going.
Yeah, no, and I think Councillor Shank, that the opportunity is there to speak to these things if we want. And you know, if any of the committee members specific to the committees want to brag about a whole bunch of stuff that they're doing or complain about things that aren't working, I mean, that opportunity is available within this concept, I think. So, and I'm sure that as time goes on, we're going to get better at doing this. But that opportunity is there, and I think it's important that, yeah, we should take advantage of that opportunity if we need to, so. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Am I correct, Madam Clerk? We just need to vote on it. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed, motion's carried. Unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business that we have? And I don't believe there is, Madam Clerk. Seeing none, items for consideration. Quinte Conservation Authority cost apportioning agreement for locally supported services. Do we have anybody speaking to this, Madam Clerk, or is that yours?
Suppose it can be mine. So through your worship, the draft agreement is before you. There is a motion or a staff recommendation that if council would like any adjustments made, that any comments or direction be provided now. There is an alternate recommendation that if you are comfortable with what is before you, you can approve this now to be executed and staff can work on making that happen.
Great, thanks, Madam Clerk. Is there any conversations, discussions, concerns, questions with respect? Go ahead, Councillor Nori.
As per Brad's talk, this is exactly like the Kingston, the Cataraqui agreement. So I move we accept it and pass it.
Great, thanks, Councillor Nori. And yes, I believe we did deal with the Quinte Conservation, which is very similar, if I'm not mistaken. So, and you're making that by way of motion. Moved by Councillor Nori, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Go ahead, Councillor Shank.
Just for the public, is agreement has to be renewed every year and has to be passed by council every year. Angela, thank you. Told me it did, just so everybody else understands that it's not just a carte blanche way you go, that every year it has to be renewed.
Yeah, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, Brad, I think, did the province not make us do this every year now, or has that been like that for a while? Yeah, come on up. Yeah.
Sorry, and just if I may, through your worship, the term in the draft agreement is for 5 years, I believe.
Come on up anyways, Brad. We'd like to hear from you, so.
Yeah, the term of the agreement, is the province set out some rules around what oh geez, I just slid right off. The province set out rules, like it has to have a start date, an end date, it has to have a termination date. However, it doesn't, we still have to come to council every year to get our budget passed. So it's not as though we're not, it's not as though we're sort of going into this and you're on the hook for all this stuff that maybe the board, the Quinte Conservation Board wants to make changes. We would have to come to the board and then come to each municipality to make any significant changes that would alter that agreement. So the programs and services category 2 and 3, yes, they're set in stone with the understanding that each year the board has to pass the budget. We have to circulate our municipal partners on that budget. We have to let them review it for 30 days. All of those provisions are still the same.
Yep, great. Thanks for clarifying that, Brad. Is there any questions or comments before we call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed, the motion's carried. Request for closing and conveying the unopened road allowance, Calvary Church. Madam Clerk, are you speaking to this one first?
Through your worship, as you have heard earlier, there is an application that has been received to close and convey this road allowance based on the consultation that staff have done with the staff at the County of Lennox and Addington. The recommendation in this report is that this request be denied until such time or on the grounds that a portion of these lands have been identified as required for future road widening. However, there are alternate options. Council may allow this to move forward and authorize proceeding with the process, like the public notice process of closing and conveying it. Council may also place on a condition such as that request from the county that if you do move forward with this, that you have a survey be done and the portion closest to County Road 1 be retained by the town until such time as it may be needed.
Thanks, Madam Clerk. Counselor Shank, then we'll go to Counselor Pennell.
Exactly what Jessica said. I'm not going to repeat exactly what you said, but just take the denied part out and let's start the process of closing it. And that the portion of the land that the county needs and we hold it in trust. But I'd like to add one other thing in is, if I'm correct, when you close a road, they have to pay us whatever that value of that portion of the road is. It's very minor in this detail, but since, and there's not a conflict of interest, I don't go to this church, but it's a daycare, all right, that they're proposing for their expansion, and it's a church. So for the little bit of money that they're going to charge, I suggest that, kind of waive those fees. They have to pay all the other fees that are according to the closing. But for the sale of the, what is it, a 40-foot road allowance? Jessica?
Through your worship, yes, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, it's a 40-foot little piece for that, what it would be. Throw that in and start the process of closing it.
Thanks, Counselor Shank. Counselor Pennell.
Thank you, worship, through you. Yeah, I would second that.
Assuming that what Counselor Shank said was he was going to move that as a motion. Seconded by Counselor Pennell. Is there, and you have what you need, Jess?
Through your worship, yes, I believe I understand the intent of this is that the council approve moving us forward to the next step in the road closure process, subject to a condition that that survey be done and a portion of the land be retained for that future road widening. And further, the council would consider waiving the sale price on the as an expense on this transaction.
That would be accurate, Counselor Shank.
On the grounds that a daycare is being built here, built that in.
That's accurate. And for the seconder, Counselor Pennell. Is there any other comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Municipal accommodation tax, and I believe, Madam Clerk, you will be speaking to this.
So through your worship, this report is here to start a conversation with council. The idea of a municipal accommodation tax has been floated a few times over the past years. And I know that we as staff know that there is a desire to look for new creative ways to bring revenue in for important projects and for growing tourism in our community. So this is here. If we start going down this road, it will be a lengthy process. So if this is something that council would like to do within this term, the sooner we start these conversations, the sooner we can have something like this up and running. But we would estimate that if we were to start having these conversations seriously now, you'd be looking at 2025 before you were having any bylaws come into force, because we would need that year for consultation with industry, making sure they're set up to collect and remit this and understanding what's going on in the process. And that's just based on talking with municipal staff who are also going through this process as to what their implementation has been like.
Great. Thanks, Madam Clerk. Who wants to start? Is there any conversation that we want to have with respect to the MAT tax? Councilor Pennell.
Through your worship, I'm probably not going to be very popular on this one. But my only concern with this is that the MAT tax would be taxed to any person who is staying at a hotel or motel currently, unless unless we set up something with the short-term accommodations. Right? So if we don't move forward with short-term accommodations, then the mat tax will not be charged with them, right?
Through your worship, that's correct. It would be relatively simple to implement this with hotels and motels because we know who they are. Whereas if you wanted to also apply this to short-term rentals, which you are able to do under this legislation, you would need a licensing program to go hand in hand with it so that you could know who your short-term rentals are that are supposed to be remitting this.
Okay, thank you. So that just helps me with my thinking is that we would be charging some people to come and visit and stay in our lovely municipality, but not all. And for that reason, I don't think I can support this, even though that's a long drawn out process to 2025. I just think, why would we be charging some people but not all that want to stay here? So hear from the rest of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pinal, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the mat tax, I realize other communities in the area charge it, but I think we're actually at a competitive advantage by not having it. There are illegal accommodations now. It's going to be an administrative nightmare for everything except the motel and hotel. That's the easiest one, but we're going to be putting them at a disadvantage by introducing a mat tax, in my opinion. So I'd prefer not to see this mat tax go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Is there anybody else that would like to comment prior to me commenting? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calvary.
I have to kind of go along with everybody else here so far. I'm trying to figure out what it's going to cost for us to implement this, and if this is actually the right time to be doing this with other tax increases and stuff definitely on its way. Is this the correct time, or should we be looking at a different time to do something like this?
Did you want me to, or did you want to answer that, Madam Clerk?
So through your worship, we are able, one of the things with the mat tax is it's not a tax on your residence or your tax base. It's a tax that's paid by visitors to your community as an additional tax on the accommodation that they're purchasing. Just to make sure that we're very clear on what we're talking about, it is still, as you say, a tax increase to some people, and maybe that is a decision factor in people on what accommodation they want to stay at. The administration, so the way the program works is you take in your revenue, the cost to administer the program come off first in your accounting for it, and then whatever's left over, you split 50-50 between your partner tourism organization and whatever priorities council designates that remaining money should be going towards. One of the things, if we were to include short-term rentals within this, staff would propose that any software that is used for the tracking and managing the licensing of the short-term rentals would be something that would be part of that reasonable costs to administer the program, as many of those providers also include a program for remitting and reporting on the mat tax. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, somewhat. I still see it as quite a burden on our staff at this moment, but yep, thank you.
Councilor Nori.
The theory sounds good and the advertising and that, but people are being taxed to death. We're taxed on gas, we're taxed on carbon, we're taxed on everything. How do we expect tourists to come and we're going to hit them with another 4%? If we can keep our hotels a little cheaper, advertise that, and maybe we'll get more tourism. But I'm sick of taxing people to death, and this is just another tax that on top of a tax on top of a tax. So that's why I'm opposed to it.
Thank you, Councilor Nori. Councilor Hicks.
So the city of Belleville has implemented the mat tax. only on hotels and motels to date. They're in the process of hiring a third-party firm to start working on the STA, so the short-term accommodation portion of it. So Brighton is also undergoing similar. They've contracted a third party. The cost for the third party for the package that they've bought is not outrageous. I'm not going to name any names because it's not our business to do that. But I can tell you that Brighton's bylaw officer cold called 40 STAs and they've already permitted 38 of the 40. Cold call, pick up the phone. We're implementing this, and by issuing a permit on the STA, so we're talking two different subjects. By issuing the permit on the STA, you also inspect the STA, which means, are they at code to house 16 people for a bachelorette party on the water in a building that was built 60 years ago and has a septic bed that's on the verge of collapse? So this is something I think that we need to be looking at as well. So by issuing the permits, you have a chance to inspect the property. 4%, if you go to Toronto and spend the night before boarding a flight, you're paying 4%. And actually, I think Toronto may actually be at 5% now. If you go to Kingston, you're paying 4%. If you go to Ottawa, you're paying 4%. Our rates for our hotels and motels are already lower than every other municipality and will continue to be lower even with a 4% tax. And it's outside tax dollars. It's outside residents. It's people coming into the town, driving their cars on our streets, utilizing our emergency services, walking our sidewalks, what have you. So I don't think that 4% tax is unreasonable. I am strongly in favor of starting the process with the hotels and motels. The chair of the Bay of Quinte Regional Marketing Board, which is the nonprofit organization we currently have an understanding with, is the general manager, I believe, of the Holiday Inn. And he remits monthly to the city of Belleville with no issue at all. It can't be that hard to cash a check. Just there is a monitoring system. It's all done by provincial regulation. It's all a regulated business. It is a tax, and we have the opportunity for a new revenue stream. We've heard costs are going up, and we have the opportunity to introduce this with the caveat that 50% of whatever is brought in after our operating costs be split with a nonprofit marketing board, which is already in place. So just as an example, based on 198 rooms in the town of Greater Napanee, this is hotel motel rooms, you're looking at $180,000 based on a 50% occupancy, with the average rate being $124 pre-tax. It's $180,000, basically 90 of which is retained by the municipality. Now, take it one step further. If you have 154 active listings in the town of Greater Napanee for short-term accommodation, this is 50% of what's in Lennox and Addington County. So we had to do some estimating. $349 a night. So if you can afford $349 a night to stay in a short-term accommodation, you can afford 4% tax to help promote tourism in the area. That brings us to an estimated $400,000 a year, $200,000 of which stays in the municipality. So I've put the numbers out there. This is all estimated, but the number of rooms have already been documented. If we start with the motels and hotels, I have always been a strong proponent of having the STA, the short-term accommodations, 90% of which are run as a business. This isn't grandma letting out the family cottage. These places are bought specifically to rent out and to earn income. 4% a night is not that bad. And it's based on bedroom. So you're permitting, I know in Brighton, they're going $300 per bedroom is the permit fee for the first year, and then it drops to $100 per bedroom. I believe that's what I was told at the board meeting yesterday for subsequent years. So you have the permit money coming in as well as the 4% mat tax. I don't think we should be dismissing this out of hand. I think we should be investigating this and we should be looking at this seriously. If at some point we can be bringing in $480,000 or $280,000 a year in revenue that is not coming from our ratepayers and we're reinvesting it in our community, I think that's really something that we need to look at. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything further? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
I respect Councillor Hicks' opinion on that. I just, I feel by only placing the mat tax on, like what we don't have a lot of hotels and motels here. We have a lot, there's more and more short-term rentals, private rentals. How are we going to figure out how to charge them? Like, are they going to voluntarily come in? I can't see how that's going to happen. I think it's going to be administratively hard to police. You can say we're getting 180,000, but then of course Quinte Marketing Board is going to be happy with that because they get 50% of that. Our costs, administrative costs, are going to come out of the 50%. I just don't see. I mean, like I say, I respect your opinion on that. I just think that we're putting our hotel, motel operators at a disadvantage, and I'll leave it at that. I'm against the mat tax.
Councillor Hicks.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Martin. So if you go and stay at the Hampton Inn by Shoeless Joe's tonight, you won't pay the 4% mat tax. Your room will be $125 a night. If you stay in Belleville, you will pay the 4% mat tax, and your room is probably going to run you $160 a night or $150. So it has not been a deterrent in Belleville or Quinte West to implement this. They have the U15, I mentioned it earlier today. So in the summer of 2024, they have the U15 soccer championships coming to the Quinte area, Belleville, and I believe Quinte West, 25 teams. Do you think that those people are going to bulk at spending 4 nights in a hotel because there's a 4%? Because everywhere else they go to play soccer, they're paying 4%. Same with hockey tournaments. You go to a hockey tournament in Toronto and you stay in a hotel, you're paying probably $300 a night and a 4% mat tax. So I don't see it as a deterrent at all. I see it only as a benefit to our books. And correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, but the portion that's given to the nonprofit regional marketing board is after our operational taxes or our operational costs have been covered, correct?
Through your worship, to a reasonable extent, yes. If we said we needed to hire an entire extra person to manage the short-term accommodation licensing, I don't think we could take that off the top and then split in 50%. But I believe other municipalities in their financial reports I've seen were doing about 10% as an administrative recovery off the top, and then doing their 50% dividing of between their partner and municipality.
And from the reading that I've done, most municipalities have outsourced to a third party who specialize in this. And I know that Brighton has also paid for the 24/7 monitoring. So you have a neighbor next door to an STA, and you've got those 16 rowdy people celebrating somebody's wedding. It gets out of control. They have that number to phone. They make their complaint and it's followed up by law. by fire, if it's a raging bonfire, by police, if it's fist fights and brawling in the front yard or whatever have you. But you have recourse then. Otherwise, all the calls are going directly to the OPP, probably if it's a noise complaint because it's 2 a.m. We don't have a bylaw officer working around the clock. They do all the scrubbing. Like they scrape the internet, they find all the addresses. Yes, it does take time, but the longer we wait, this has already been tabled once before, if not twice, I think in the previous term. It's found money. It's money that we're losing. We're losing out on this.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hicks, you spent some time talking about the STAs again. And I don't have a problem with the MAT tax in theory. I have a problem with us not being able to charge this or have this applicable to everybody that is staying in our region at this time. So I think that if majority of this or half of this or whatever the percentage is going to be on the short terms, then let's pull up our socks. Let's get working on the short terms and then add this on here. But as I spoke when I started off, I can't support this on only giving a disadvantage to some of the ways that people can stay in our municipality. I'll leave it with that for now. Thank you.
Councillor Norrie.
Not going to belabor, just quickly, you're right, Councillor Pennell. Last term of council, we had it up 2 years ago, 3. It started down in Ward 1 with an issue. And every time we bring it up, it can't be done at this time, staffing, bylaw, et cetera. So until we have it in place, then I'd be more than happy to look at this. But I agree with Councillor Pennell. Once we have the SDAs in place, proper bylaw, register, then we could look at this. I think we're putting the cart before the horse, my opinion only.
Thank you, Councillor Norrie. Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
So through your worship, I would like to make a motion based on the staff report. Jessica, help me out here with wording if necessary. When I look at the alternative options and implications, I would like to go with 1 and 2 and start the ball rolling. So direct staff to investigate implementing a MAT for the town of Greater Napanee, including undertaking public and industry consultations with the results of the consultation and potential implementation strategy to be reported to council Q1 of 2024. So that's by the end of March. So we can put a date on that and the time frame. In addition to option 1, direct staff to investigate and report back on the cost, timelines, and impacts of licensing STAs. If we're doing it, we'll do it in conjunction.
You are making that by way of motion, Councillor Hicks.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you have what you need for the motion? Do we have someone that will second that motion? Seconded by Councillor Norrie. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none at this point, I hope I'm not getting out of line, but I wouldn't mind weighing in. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Martin.
I just was going to ask for a recorded vote on it.
Yeah, we can have a recorded vote. I think Madam Clerk can do that. I personally think that we're missing out on a revenue stream here, and we are not paying enough attention to what's going on. We've got a number of things going on here. We have the MAT tax, municipal accommodation tax is on the agenda tonight, but we have a bigger issue with respect to our short-term accommodations. We are years behind our neighbors with respect to this. And that's just the reality of it, is that everybody around us has introduced a municipal accommodation tax, except for us. Almost everybody around us, with the exception of some of our neighbors, have instituted short-term accommodation regulations. We can't continue to allow short-term accommodations to go unregulated, because when things go unregulated, bad things happen. And I'm dealing with one out County Road 9 as we speak, which is not going away. So we have to start somewhere. And we have to start looking at the municipal accommodation tax. We have to start looking at regulating the short-term accommodations. If not, we're just going to get overrun and will be near impossible to get caught up. And I don't want to be impossible to get caught up. It's a revenue stream that I think we should look at. And I don't think that by starting down the road of looking at it, that would be wasting our time or our effort, because I was obviously looking at the municipalities that are all around us, they're knees deep into this already. And I don't want to fixate on the $180,000 because that's just a guesstimate at best. But if you do the research on some of these municipalities, the municipal accommodation tax brings in well over $1 million to some of them. And I don't think we can just arbitrarily say, no, we're not doing it because it's not fair. So that's where I'm weighing in on it. We have to start somewhere. And I believe this is a really good start to get us going. So I apologize for being very wordy on this. And if anything has come out of what I had to say, I will give you the opportunity. Go ahead, Councillor Norrie.
Just quickly, so I'm clear. This is just to investigate both MAT and STAs now, reinvestigate STAs, get it on the board, but we're not deciding we're doing this. We can still turn it down in 2025, correct?
Sorry. Through your worship, that is correct. If given that Councillor Hicks is reading out those options in our reports, that was certainly staff's intention. We believe if you want to start down this road, the first step should be to talk to your hotel and motel operators and get their feedback before council makes any final decision as to what to do.
Councillor Shank.
From Brighton to Quinte West, right straight through to Gananoque, where there's every municipality has a MAT tax. But the point is when you consolidate, I have some concerns, but this is going to be the process, a long process of going through. What the county has done with naturally LNA, I think is fantastic. It's done a lot of good for along Highway 33 and everywhere that they've done, the county's done. Now, am I in agreement to give 50% after expenses to a nonprofit organization that what did they do or what they don't do? That's a whole nother discussion, and that's what you're going to be going down through. All right. Is there any other different avenues that we could do with, nonprofit organization in the community that might be able to do the same type of service? I don't know. All right. But the point is there's a ton of questions to be asked. The bylaw that in place, and Angela mentioned the first year, if you're an STA, it's $300. So you have a bedroom, a 3-bedroom house or whatever, minimum 3-bedroom house, if you're going to be renting it out. So that's $900 right off the hop. All right. Plus 4% that anybody pays into it. Now I understand, I've traveled a lot of places too. And as everybody else is here, when you go to Toronto or anywhere else, or you're on holidays, there's accommodation, this MAT tax is pretty well everywhere. All right. But the point is I hate to put up something in place that we can't control, or we don't have a bylaw in place to enforce it. Problems that we have here, considering the amount of STAs that we have, short-term accommodations, is minor considering how many we have. But the reason why we have bylaws in place is because the few spoil it for the many. So if you want to go through that process and go down and take a look at all these different options and to come back with a report, and after we've had a report and have a public meeting with all the people that have short-term and all the Airbnbs and the motels and the hotels and what their opinion is, I totally agree with Councillor Norrie, what he said, that let's go there down through this process. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't make sense and it's not fitting for our community, well, then we'll make that decision then. But I hate to shut something off and not investigate it further. So that's my comments on that.
Deputy Mayor Calvary, and then I'll go to Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna look at it, we should look at the STAs as well as the hotels. I mean, we need to get something in play. We've got a pile of short-term accommodations. They're popping up more and more every day. We have virtually no rules, no regulations. We don't have any licensing fees for them, and that's something we should get. I know you're dealing with an issue that's been ongoing now for quite some time, and we don't have the sources to deal with it. I guess we have the source, shouldn't use the word, we don't have the source to deal with it, but we're limited on our sources. And so if we're going to do this, we want to make sure we bring everything to the table with it as well. And I guess my next thing is, does this money have to go to the Bay of Quinte? Or can it go to another tourism?
So through your worship, under the regulations, it has to go to an incorporated nonprofit entity that has a mandate for tourism. At this point, the Bay of Quinte Marketing is the most obvious entity that has that, fits that description and is in our area. That's not to say that there might not be a different nonprofit organization that would exist at the time that council was ready to do this or at some future time. You're not required to stick with your first agreement forever and ever. There's always the ability to make changes.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Martin.
I won't belay this too long, but I don't like anything that puts our businesses at a disadvantage. The instances of drunkenness, loud music, whatever, I don't see how that's going to be taken care of by a mat tax. Councillor Hicks brought up the fact there's a soccer tournament in Belleville or whatever, and people are going to be staying there, paying a mat tax. But maybe we should be touting the fact we don't have a mat tax. Maybe we can brag about that. Maybe we can get more people in here because we don't charge them more money. I don't see the correlation between the short-term accommodation problems that we have. The problems that we have are loud music, drunkenness, or whatever, and that's not going to be taken care of by the mat tax.
No,
Thank you, Mayor.
and you're right, Councilor Martin. I think we're starting to cloud the issues. What we're doing tonight, we're here to deal with the municipal accommodation tax. However, the municipal accommodation tax can be applied to the short-term accommodations, and the short-term accommodation debacle that we're now experiencing has to be addressed as well. So I don't want to cloud the two. They are related, but we're not actually talking about short-term accommodations this evening, except for if this process gets into place, we can apply the MAT tax to the short-term accommodations. So we're getting kind of clouded here. So I think if we stick to where we're supposed to be, I think we'd be better off. So I'll go to Councillor Pennell and then I'll go to Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the clerk. There's a comment that we would look at the hotels and motels first because they're easy and they're already there. So my question is the report coming back as per option number 1 and option number 2? Is that the one that we did? And we had the 2 options. Is the report gonna entail both of them at the same time, or with the comment of the hotels and motels being first?
So through your worship, that would be up to council to determine the timing of these bylaws being implemented. In the report, it notes the timing for each of those jurisdictions in our area. Some of them, Brighton being one example, chose to do their short-term accommodation licensing first, and then to do the MAT as a second step. I believe Prince Edward County also did them in that order. Some of the other municipalities already had the hotel levy system that predated this piece of legislation in place. So some of their hotels were already collecting this. So they just rolled that program into their municipal accommodation tax and then did the short-term accommodations after. But that the timing of which piece comes first, or if they both come in at the same time, that is up to council to determine.
Okay, thank you. So again, back to how I feel on this, is that I would want to make sure that we deal with the short-term accommodations first. So therefore, that does get captured in this program and not just put off to the wayside for another how many years, that sort of thing. So that's the way I would like to see it, is we go after the STAs first. And because we do say that it's easy, the hotels, motels, and I know that some might say that we're leaving money on the table, but as I started off tonight stating that, I think it needs to be fair for everybody that stays in our municipality. Thank you.
Counselor Hicks.
So through you, your worship. So just to put it in perspective, Belleville is just now implementing the licensing and permitting schedule for short-term accommodation. However, their hotel motel mat revenue for 2022 was $1.2 million. Belleville has more hotels and motels, obviously. All major hotel chains are represented in Belleville. So as I said, you've got the Hampton Inn out by the 401, the Hampton Inn in Belleville. Their GM is submitting the paperwork and the revenue monthly to Belleville for a 4%. You can't tell me that the person running the Hampton Inn out here isn't familiar with the mat tax. So yes, public consultation, industry consultation, I get all that. I don't see why we can't be doing things concurrently. One does not have to follow after the other. We can start investigating what needs to be done to set up the mat. We can talk to the hotel and motel owners. By the way, some of the smaller motels do monthly rentals, so anything over 30 days, you don't collect mat on. So if they're doing a short-term stay for housing purposes, you don't collect anything on that. It is literally a visitor tax. I'm rolling into town for the weekend for the family reunion, I'm paying the tax. So Brighton, who I mentioned earlier, is undergoing this, has retained a third-party company. The cost was not outrageous to do address identification, rental activity monitoring, and tax collection, as well as the 24/7 hotline phone number. The process was very lengthy because it took MPAC 6 months to come back to Brighton with the parcel data for the municipality with what houses or what residences had actually been identified. So why don't we get started on that? That takes us basically to the end of Q1 of 2024. Like, let's be proactive and start. We don't have to do a bylaw right now, but let's just get the data so we know what kind of numbers that we're looking at. And not only that, the people that are getting into this, they're buying a house, they're flipping it. No, yeah, it's going to be an Airbnb and we're going to make $1 million. When they find out that they have to be permitted, they're going to be inspected and they're going to pay a mat tax. That's a lot of work. I don't think I want to get into that business. So you can start weeding out some of the people that are not going to be good business owners. This is a business, or it should be treated as a business. So I'm done. I've done my best. So
Thank you,
let's vote.
Counselor Hicks. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Counselor Martin.
Could I just say one thing further, Counselor Hicks? Do you not realize the businesses, the hotels already pay tax? They pay business taxes, they pay taxes in this town. So I don't know why we would want to have them pay more.
Counselor Shank and then Counselor Hicks.
So just so I get this clear, so I understand it. All right, so Mr. Mayor, if you could indulge me, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. When I rent, when I go to a motel, hotel, STA, anywhere else, I pay, let's say the room's $100. All right, now I have to pay $104. The $4 is an in and out for the landowner, All right, it's just basically they're just being the tax collector for the municipality. It's 4%. So if it's $100 bill, if they have to pay $100 for the room, it's $104. They collect it, they go back in. So if that's correct, right, with the math. Now, if you're gonna, I want to have all the information, so I don't want to have anything more ahead or this one back, because when you look through the report, Belleville, Brighton, Gananoque, Kingston, the licensing and everything else, I just like to have a full report so I understand. I don't want to have one thing ahead of the other. Wait until you have everything all together. If you want to start now, what Angela or Councillor Hicks had said about getting some of the stuff from MPAC, fine, but do your STAs and your other motels and hotels. So when you have a public open meeting, all right, to discuss this and what the process is going to be, because there's going to be confusion, all right, that you have all the facts in front of you. All right. Then when you have everything in front of you, then if everybody's in agreement, then we can make that decision then. Because the licensing, the permitting, what it actually costs, who's going to be the nonprofit organization that's going to take 50% after expenses, which is now 10%. You know what I mean? Are we going to need another extra bylaw person to control this? What are the things unknown that we might not know? But I just like to have a thorough report. And this, as you had said, it's not going to be done until 2025 anyway, but given that time, please put a report together, have everything together so I can make an informed decision on all the facts, not just this portion now and that portion later. That's my feeling, you know what I mean? And there we go.
Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, just to clarify, you are correct, Councillor Shank. It is not the business that is paying the 4%. It is the person purchasing the night's accommodation is paying the 4%. It's simply, it's on the hotel. They slide it under your door and there it is. That's it. It's the person who is paying for the hotel room. It is not, they're simply collecting the money and they go through and they say, oh, okay, this month we owe the town of Napanee for our occupancy rates $5,000. And that's how that's done. It's not coming out of the business operate. Fox Motel is not paying the 4% out of their earnings. It is the tourist or person renting the room.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, worship through you. I was just wondering if we could ask the Councillor Hicks to make a friendly amendment to the motion as to what Councillor Shank said, so that we have both reports, everything come back together for us to vote on.
I think, Madam Clerk, that's what the intentions was. At least that's what I took from the motion is that in addition to option 1, direct staff to investigate and report back cost, timelines and impacts. So I'm sensing from that motion that that's what Councillor Hicks was suggesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Hicks.
Through your worship, that was the intent. It's understood, or at least it's understood by me, that we're not going to have a complete listing with property owner names and who to send a letter out to saying, hey, you're an STA and it's going to cost you this much for a permit. Let us know when we can come and inspect. And by the way, as of June 1st, you're going to start collecting 4% MAP. It's to have the discussions with industry. It's to have the investigation done through MPAC. Like, I think if we request the parcel, like I said, if we request the parcel data, Brighton's already breaking ground on this. They're of a similar size, and I think we should be using the lessons learned by them to make it smoother for us. And Mr. Hagerman has actually offered to come and speak about and to meet. I don't know, Jessica, if you've met with him or had any discussions, but he's very knowledgeable and yeah.
So if I may, through your worship, just to clarify the resolution, because I hear what you're saying, I have rearranged the clauses slightly so that I believe it gets the intent very clear. which the motion that is being proposed is that council receive for information the municipal accommodation tax match report. And further, the council directs staff to investigate implementing a MAT for the town of Greater Napanee, including undertaking public and industry consultations. And further, the council directs staff to investigate and report back on the costs, timelines, and impacts of licensing short-term accommodations. And further, that council direct that the results of the consultation and potential implementation strategy be reported to council in Q1 of 2024. Does that clarify that those are together?
It's, first of all, is that the sense of the mover and the seconder? Mover and the seconder. Yes. Councillor Purnell.
Thank you. The only reason, through you, Mr. Mayor, the only reason why I asked that is because there has been lots of talk going back and forth. And I do believe we started off about how we would go after the hotels and motels first. That was part of the conversation that came out. So I just wanted to make sure, and I appreciate that that's what's happening.
Okay. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? Sorry, you're right, Madam Clerk. I'm going to turn it over to you to do the recorded vote.
Right. Councillor Shank, Ward 1.
Yes.
Councillor Hicks, Ward 2.
Yes.
Councillor Purnell, Ward 3.
Yes.
Councillor Norrie, Ward 4.
Yes.
Councillor Martin, Ward 5.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Calvary.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thanks, folks. Good conversation. Moving on. Legislative Services Backyard Poultry Review. And I believe, Madam Clerk, did you want to start off speaking to that?
Through your worship, I believe the information is available in the report there. We are just reporting back as was previously requested in the spring. At this point, we're just looking for direction from council. There are a few different options presented and council could choose some or none of those. Just looking for how to move forward on this item. Happy to take any questions.
Does anybody want to start with respect to this discussion? Councillor Hicks.
After reading everything, through your worship, after reading everything, I move that we go with option 1, which is to maintain the status quo and come back in 1 year and revisit.
And you make that by way of motion?
I do.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Thank you, Councillor Shank. We have the motion on the floor, and it's time now for discussion. Who go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calvary.
Yeah, I'd like to see it moved a few years out. There's still no cure for the avian bird flu at all. We've already had several new backyard chickens pop up, 5 that I know of. We currently have a bylaw that states that can't be happening. So it is happening and we need to get that addressed because this avian bird flu hasn't gone away and I don't foresee it going away anywhere too soon. It's been around now for quite a few years and we need to protect our livestock around us as well as other businesses. So I'd like a year's okay, but I'd like to see it moved out for 2 years.
I believe Madam Clerk would like to comment. Go ahead.
Through your worship, I would also just like to highlight option 3 that is in this report is that it could be in addition to option 1, directing staff to look into a supplemental bylaw to regulate the keeping of animals more broadly. Yes, technically, the way our zoning bylaw is written, livestock is only allowed in a property that is zoned for agricultural uses. However, it is not, we do not have a bylaw with a black and white clause where you can say no person shall keep livestock in an urban area. No person shall allow their livestock to run at large. We don't have those very black and white provisions that we can be enforcing. It is all being managed through zoning right now. which I do understand creates some frustrations for residents who maybe feel that it's ambiguous, and for staff when we're trying to communicate this with residents. So if that is the will of council, I just wanted to highlight that that's a potential supplemental option in addition to deferring the question of whether it's appropriate to have chickens in the urban areas at this time. In the meantime, to also look at this other piece.
Go ahead, Councillor Hicks. I think I know where you're going with it.
Through your worship, so Madam Clerk, the additional cost implications to the town's current dog control. So not only would we have to contract for dogs at large, but Mrs. Brown's chicken, so to speak. Is it worth taking on additional cost and amending that contract? Or to follow up what Deputy Mayor Calvary said, do we extend the status quo for 2 years? Because in 2 years, you may have to revisit this because they've got a vaccine and now everything's hunky-dory and everybody can have a chicken in their backyard because there's no risk of the avian flu. And so then you have to amend the bylaw again. I'm just wondering if option, and I just lost it, option 3 will complicate it.
Through your worship, at this point, we don't, we just wanted to highlight that there might be an implication. At this point, our contract for animal control is only for dogs. Previously, prior to 2015, we had, I cannot imagine this was ever enforced, but our animal control bylaw said that if a livestock was found at large, it would be impounded by an officer and held at the municipal pound. I don't think that we ever did that. I don't think that we would be proposing to do that. That's where your potential cost implications would come in if that was something that we were going to look at doing, but I don't believe that's where staff would be looking to go with it. It would be more just, if it's not covered in that, we would start with a conversation. What would it take for this to be covered? Would it cost us more? Would it not cost us more? And then it would just be an enforcement officer being able to follow up on complaints and investigate and issue orders.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
This would be the bylaw officer that is already super busy. So again, unless you can enforce it, I don't think we should put it in writing. That's just, and I would be willing to do a friendly amendment to my earlier motion to extend it to 2 years. In fairness to the residents that would really like to see this happen, I don't think going beyond 2 years. I think 2 years is the maximum time I'm willing to go to stay with the status quo.
Okay, we'll start with the friendly amendment. The mover is suggesting a friendly amendment, and I believe Councillor Shank was the seconder. Did you want to agree with that friendly amendment? And then I'm going to allow you to say.
I just want to keep it KISS principle. Go with number 1, 2 years. That's it. No, nothing else. There you go. Somebody else does it. We have the zoning bylaws. We have other stuff. Let's just keep it simple. 2 years. There we go.
And I will take that as yes, you will agree to the friendly amendment. So we do have a motion on the floor. Is there anything else we would like to speak to? Deputy Mayor Calvary and then Councillor Martin.
Just a question for Mike. You've got some livestock, horses and cattle and stuff. If they get out on the road and cause an accident, whose insurance covers that?
If one of the cattle happen to go through a fence and end up in the road and a vehicle goes ahead and hits it, it's the person that's driving the vehicle covers the insurance fight it out, because you're supposed to be care and control at all times of your vehicle. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I know of other things that it's happened very similar to that. And one of the farmers happened to go ahead and help pay for the vehicle, to fix the vehicle. And the insurance agent ripped the farmer a new one because now you're showing that you were automatically guilty. Acts of God, you have a snowstorm, fence goes down, a tree goes across it, the cow goes out. Well, it's act of God, but if automatically that's the day and times that you have today. So that's the reason why I have insurance. I just don't want to go down what Prince Edward County did about bylaws and fake cattle just because of one guy. All right, so that's the reason why option one, simple as that.
Okay. Counselor Martin.
I just want clarification. Is the motion option one?
So through your worship, the motion that I currently have sitting in front of me is that council receive for information the Legislative Services Backyard Poultry Report. Further, that given the lack of vaccine for the avian flu, council maintain the status quo regarding urban hen keeping for the time being. And further, the council direct that the matter be revisited in 2 years.
Are you good with that, Counselor Martin?
I'm good.
Perfect. Is there anything else? Seeing nothing, we do have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And let's try one more before we take a break, I think, Madam Clerk, because I know you're going to be wanting me to take a break. The proposed refreshment vehicle licensing bylaw. And I believe, again, Madam Clerk, you're up.
So through your worship, as outlined in this report, this draft bylaw has been created based on the feedback we received the last time this was discussed. We would be proposing to bring forward a bylaw for adoption on October 24th, implementation on January 1st, subject to any additional feedback, comments, or concerns, either made tonight or in the immediate, probably not anytime too close to the 24th, but if something comes up tomorrow that you've thought of that we've missed in the discussion tonight, we can probably look if there's some clarity in wording that's needed. And then per the motion that was made in August, the next time, if this is adopted, the next time a housekeeping amendment is made to the zoning bylaw, any corresponding amendments to zoning to support this would be made at that time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there any questions, comments, and concerns? Go ahead, Councilor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Worship. To Madam Clerk, I just have one item of concern in the draft bylaw 5.8. It states that no licensee shall operate a refreshment vehicle from an area designated as a municipal parking lot unless written permission has been granted by the town in connection with a special event. I'm just wondering if we could delete in connection with a special event.
Through your worship, the other, after you emailed on me on this, the other option I thought of is or adding the words or through a seasonal park permit. If that helps clarify, so that we could have them in municipal parking lots, either through a seasonal permit or as part of a special event. As long as there's some written permission, does that?
I think that's even better. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Pennell. Is there anything else? Councilor Shank?
Is there a fee schedule attached to this that I missed on the computer?
So through your worship, there is a fee schedule for the licenses in Schedule A. That is only for the license to operate. There is also in the separate fees for services bylaw, which is looked at every year, typically during budget. That is where the lease fee for the park spaces comes into play. So that's, we will be looking at that lease fee during budget 2024. But it's the second last page, I believe. And just for further clarification, these are the license fees that Loyalist Township is currently charging. We thought that that would be a good place to start our benchmarking for this, as we don't currently have they're also in this similar range to what we are charging for taxi licenses, which is the only other business we license at this time.
Through you, Your
Counselor
Worship.
Hicks, I first you should check, make sure. Counselor Shank, are you done? Are you good? Or was there something else first?
I have a pretty good idea of how much a chip truck makes in the different areas. You know, what I mean? Now, just so I quit this, I'm not the greatest on computers. What for $300 for a new license for class 1, 2, 3 professional vehicle, new license for class 4, 150. Now, is there other fees applied? Because remember we were originally saying, so
Yeah, so through your worship, this is the fee to get that license for the town to be reviewing the site plan, doing the safety inspection, signing off that this is an appropriate location for this vehicle from a safety perspective, and that you are in good standing with public health and fire, and if it's applicable, the TSSA. That's what this fee is covering, those administrative costs. If you are on a private box store wants you in their parking lot, they might be charging you rent to be there. That's a private agreement. We have nothing to do with that. If you want to be in Springside Park, for an example, that is set up, that's not in this bylaw, that's in a different bylaw. Right now it is $700, I believe, and we know that that's low and it is being looked at during budget to be increased for next year.
So Jessica, what all I'm saying is as we were well aware of what salaries are and what the cost is, and you just mentioned, you know, you've got fire, you've got this, you've got health, you've got all the other ones that are looking at this. And when you look at the new license is $300 and $100. All I'm saying is this, we have to have at least a cost recovery. So are we at a cost recovery on this new license when you have all your executives or all your managers that are looking at all this after all those people, or $100 or $300? I at least want to be at a cost recovery and a permit. That's just my opinion.
So through your worship, we can look at those rates again from that perspective. The $100 one is for a bicycle. If you are like wanting a little cart towed behind a bike, that's why it's that low. There's not a ton of review that needs to be done on those ones.
Great, thanks. Counselor Hicks. You good now? Or did it? Okay. I'm sure it'll come back. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we do have a mover and a seconder. Am I correct, Madam Clerk? Oh, okay. Well, we do have a recommendation. Council received for information the proposed refreshment vehicle licensing bylaw report, and further that council consider a bylaw to license refreshment vehicles at October 24, 2023 meeting, subject to any feedback provided up to and during this meeting, which I do believe that we did get some feedback. So if we're good with that, I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Banal, seconded by Councilor Shank. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. And I believe now we will take a 10-minute break, Madam Clerk, and we will be back at approximately 8:55. Thanks, folks, and we won't be long. Welcome back, folks. Moving on, we're on to 9.6 on our agenda, the completed reserve policy report. And I believe Mr. Murphy is going to speak to that. Go ahead, Nathan.
Through your worship, not a whole lot to add here. This is substantially the same as what I brought 2 meetings ago. Not significant changes, just a little bit more explanation and some added context in terms of reserve balances and some projected annual contributions just to kind of give reference to it as well. I will make a bit of a note on the working capital reserves. You'll see in the discussion section of the report, there's a bunch of different reserves that are referenced. Some of those did technically exist previously, but they were all bundled under working capital. So what we've done here is pulled them out of working capital reserves and actually established them as their own rather than sitting in that kind of singular pool of money. So that's kind of the explanation on that, but I'm happy to take any questions on any other matters related to it.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. Is there any questions or comments with respect to Nathan's verbal report or the report that's before us online? Go ahead, Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, worship, through you, Nathan. Thanks for this report. Just wondering if we could add an aquatics reserve to this as well.
Through your worship, I have no problem with that. We can absolutely add one there. Would be happy to take some recommendations on verbiage and what we're looking for on that. I do believe we're likely going to have something to that effect coming through in the budget proceedings, if I'm not mistaken, on that topic. So happy to consider that and bring that forward, and we can add that amendment to this policy if we would like.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Norrie.
Sorry, I'm just not too good with figures, even though my dad was an accountant, so I do apologize, but basically the money's just in the bank and you've identified how much goes here for this sort of thing, and spending still relies on council's approval over a certain amount. Is that right?
Through your worship to Councillor Norrie, in regards to spending money out of reserves, that absolutely still remains in the power of council, and certain spending caps are administered through our procurement bylaw. So that remains completely unchanged. The significance of this is we had a number of reserves that were established over time, and it was kind of difficult to track down resolutions on what they were made for, what they related to. So we kind of wanted to level set, essentially, here are all of our reserves all in one bylaw. And if we were to ever update that again, we would update the whole bylaw to say, here are these, or here's the amendment to that specific bylaw. So as Councillor Purnell just brought forward, he would like to add another reserve to that. We would amend the bylaw and put that in there rather than having separate resolutions or separate bylaws for each of them. So just puts them all in common place. So the administration of them still remains the same.
Thank you. Answered my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Norrie. Is there anything else? Deputy Mayor Calvary.
Yeah, so just for clarification, any money that has to come out of any reserves still comes back to council.
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Calvary, that is correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And is there anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Purnell.
Thank you, worship. Nathan, just I added up the recommended annual contributions of 3.6 mil, almost 3.7 mil. This will be obviously coming to us during budgetary.
Through your worship to Councillor Purnell, yes, it may be a bit of a reach considering our current contribution level going back on last year's. But we certainly have to make that advance and try and push towards some sort of common goal across the municipality on how we're going to raise some of these reserves. On the total you mentioned there, that 3.6 million. On the utility side, we are actually contributing a significant portion of that on an annual basis through capital and maintenance surcharges. So that portion on itself is almost fully funded currently on an annual basis. So that's a step in the right direction, and that's fantastic on our end. It's more on the town side that we need to kind of pull up our socks here again and reevaluate where we sit on that.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Purnell.
Sorry, I just said to you, Mr. Mayor, follow up, but it's a separate question. The PUC fund, do we need to make a decision on that tonight?
Through your worship to Councillor Purnell, no, we've pushed that to 2024 budget. So we don't. If you would like to, we can, but there's no burning platform to do that. We do have a little bit more time. That's committed obviously until April of next year, but we would like to kind of have that evaluated in the budget cycle for sure.
Okay, great. I'd like to wait. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor Purnell. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Councilor Shank.
Yeah, Nathan, my only thing what I'm, you're carrying a current list of this council, what we've spent from last budget. All right, what we inherited to what we've gone out of the reserves that we've spent into the reserves so far, right? Because I was looking at the balance. We're going to go through the budget and go through all this, but every line item that we actually went through the reserves, that you having a line item saying, this what was this what you did, this what you did, everything else along as we have an accurate record of it. All right, there we go. As long as you're doing that, then yep.
Through your worship, yeah, sorry, kind of give you a nod there, but yes, we have done that, and I don't know what previous practice was, but our auditors do require that we have records of any resolution on council to pull from reserves. So we keep those records on file in the finance department, so that should be a non-issue moving forward as well.
Thanks, Nathan. Is there anything else? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation. Council receive for information financial services completed reserve policy, and further that council direct that the amended policy be presented for adoption through a bylaw at a future meeting. Moved by Councilor Purnell, seconded by Councilor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Ice resurfacer replacement. Is that you as well, Nathan? Go ahead.
Through your worship, not a whole lot to add on this one. It's kind of a follow-up to the reserve one, kind of ties in nicely. We already have a reserve set up for this one and has been for a number of years. We have 2 machines at the SPC currently. The second one is coming to an end of its useful life. So we're just trying to get ahead on that because the lead time on purchase is nearly a year. So just trying to bring this forward now. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks. Nathan, go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, worship. Nathan, I see that there's a request in here to have this sole sourced. And my question to you is the pricing that we have on this. Does it go back to the 2021 quote? We'll start with that.
Through your worship to Councillor Purnell, no, we reached out to Olympia to receive an updated quote. So we have one from August.
I'm just wondering if we reached out in August, why we just didn't go to an a request for tender as well at the same time. This is a lot of money just to sole source and at the time.
Fair question. Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Purnell. That's fair. We had originally planned to take this to council in August, quite honestly, and it kind of got bumped back. So at this point in time, no actual explanation, quite honestly, as to why we couldn't have done it in that time period. We'd prepared the report, just kind of pushed it down the line. Staff are more than willing to go out for RFT. We just looked at this as an opportunity to act a little quicker, knowing we had done an RFT 2 years prior and gotten no other tenders, but there's no reservations on our end if we have to do that. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I just think that maybe we didn't get any 2 years ago with it being still in the heart of the lockdown in 2021. So I would like to see, if it's only going to put us back a month or so, hopefully the machine will last that much longer. So that would be my recommendation, that we go for another tender.
Through your worship to Councillor Purnell, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I will comment. The one main reason that we wanted to try and do this through a sole source was we wanted to have it done prior to budget cycle as well. So rather than wait for the tender and be in the midst of budget, it would be basically approved as part of it. But that, like you mentioned, the timeline has pushed back, so we're kind of tying into that anyways. But just to clarify, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and from my knowledge of ice resurfacers, there's not a lot of people that make them. There's only 2, right? So, and because the lead time on it is so far ahead, I think it's probably the appropriate thing to single source with respect to this, and it's justified in the report with respect to we don't want to have 2 completely different ice resurfacers that require 2 separate sets of parts that are going to require two separate servicing agreements to have them done. It would sort of make sense just to single source it. And like I say, if my memory served me right, the lead time on it is extremely difficult. So. Counselor Shank.
My only, this is, I don't know if it's penny pinching or not, you have a trade-in allowance of $15,000 through gov deals or anything else the municipality goes. Do you think that there's any other way that we can increase that from 15 to anything else? You've already looked at that, I assume anyway, but.
Through your worship to Councillor Shank, I personally, I would have to speak to Chris on what we've done historically. That's one of the main reasons that Olympia is who we look to, because we can do a direct trade-in and knocks off the price for them. I don't know personally what they go for on the open market or on gov deals. I don't know.
Through your worship, if I may, Councillor Shank, I was the fleet manager prior to this, and I can tell you that the $15,000 is a good trade-in value. We more than likely would get around $7,000 to $8,000 on gov deals.
Great. Is there anything else? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calvary.
What year are the current ice resurfacers now that we have?
Through your worship, we have a 2021, which we purchased on the last RFT. And then I believe we have a 2012 that we're looking to replace, which would be this one.
Okay, and how much do we actually have in reserves to go towards this machine?
Through your worship, I'd have to look at my spreadsheet, but I believe it's around $60,000.
Yeah, and I think that's contained within the report. Opening balance, 54,181. Estimated revenue for 2023 is 9,000, which brings it a closing balance of 63,181. 2024 contributions of 4,500 brings it up to 67,681. And I think there is a suggestion in here that the ice resurfacer replacement fee be bounced up from $2 per ice time. I think it's $2 per hour, to be bounced up to $5.
Through your worship, yeah, that's correct. It's per hour, yeah.
Yeah, and when I learned of this, which was a number of years ago, I thought it was a pretty good idea. Is that you're charging your users, putting into a reserve fund to pay for the ice resurfacer, and we've been very lucky so far that it's been working. So I could only hope that maybe this concept could be continued on in other aspects of our corporation. I think it would be very helpful, but. And I've not yet, of all the days that I spent at the arena anyways, complained about the fact that when they're paying for their ice time, that they're also contributing to a ice resurfacer replacement fee. So bouncing them up, I think is probably a good plan, up to the $5. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Calvary.
Yeah, that's great. So the money's coming out of that reserve out of there, the 67,681 versus coming out of our capital. Is that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct. So we as it mentions in the report, there will likely be a deficiency depending on delivery date, but that should be repaid through the reserve increase in the following year.
Okay, so that's at 24,719.
Through you,
If
yeah.
we're a year out, there's a good chance we may have all that money there anyways.
Through your worship, I did do a projection as if we would have that revenue coming in next year anyway. So that is likely going to be around the deficiency. It'll be the following year that we would pick up the slack, so to say.
Is there anything else? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation that council receive for information financial services ice resurfacer replacement report, and further that council approve the sole source purchase of a Millennium H Olympia ice resurfacer at a cost of $92,400, and further that council approve the funding strategy, the funds in the ice resurfacer replacement reserve, and once exhausted, the municipal capital reserve to be repaid as fees are collected. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calvary, seconded by Councillor Norrie. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, Opposed, motion's carried. Request for supportive resolution establishing a guaranteed livable income. Do we have someone speaking to this?
Through your worship, in going through the correspondence, I found the letter from Grimsby to be quite enlightening. I have always been in favor of a living wage. I understand that the minimum wage is going to be increased to on October 1st to $16.55 an hour, which would bring in 25 for 37 and a half hour week, would bring in $2,500 a month before taxes. And Dave, Councillor Pennell and I were talking, and I think rent on an apartment in Napanee runs around $1,800 a month, and then you still have your heat, your hydro, a telephone of some sort, and food. So minimum wage is not a living wage. So I would just like to support Grimsby on this. I know that there's opinions on both sides, and I can see both sides of it, but when you're trying to feed a family and keep a roof over their head at minimum wage, it's difficult to do. So that's my 2 cents on that subject.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anybody else who would like to make comment on it? Seeing none, is there anyone that would like to make I think we're looking for a resolution. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, through your worship, if there is a desire to make a resolution, but to Councillor Hicks perhaps to have some wording for that.
I'll let Madam Clerk come up with the correct verbiage, but yes. I would
I'm
like-
sensing it to be a note receive and support. Am I correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so through your worship, if you don't have any specific whereas statements you want to make, it would just be that Council of Greater Napanee support the motion from Town of Grimsby and provide letters to the appropriate elected officials.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Hicks. Seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. Next is request for supportive resolution, chronic pain treatments. And I believe Councillor Hicks would like to speak that as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so I am very familiar with 2 individuals who suffer from chronic pain. Removing this, reducing the coverage for chronic pain treatment. We already have an opioid crisis, and opioids are the preferred medication for this type of chronic pain. If you can find an alternative method, it's cheaper in the long run than trying to treat an addiction. Not to mention the fact that for some people, this is, they get relief once a week or once a month when they go for these injections for these nerve blockers, and removing that option from them is not, I don't think it's right. There's already an issue with healthcare in this country, specifically for us in this province. So I would like to make a resolution supporting to note and receive and support the municipality of Wawa on this.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this?
And that a copy of the resolution be forwarded to all municipalities in Ontario and local MPs and MPPs. Thanks. Thank you,
Great.
Council.
And let's put a motion on the floor first. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. Is there any further comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor?
As a recipient of some of these medications that are not covered, that you have to pay out of pocket, you even have to pay cash to the doctor to administer some of these things. my knee was around $700 when it was all said and done, but I have a friend of mine that's looking at about $400 a month for her medication for her migraines. And it's ridiculous that it's not covered under any drug plan. So definitely support it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calvert. Is there any other further conversations, questions, or concerns with respect to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws. We have a bylaw number 2023-0063 being a bylaw to appoint a deputy fire chief. And I think what we'll do is we'll put the bylaw on the floor, I guess. Mover seconder, and then we'll give, I think Chief Hammond may want to do an introduction. Moved by Councillor Norrie, seconded by Councillor Martin. And go ahead, Bill. We have a motion on the floor, so go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship, I'd like to introduce Deputy Fire Chief James Feeney. He comes to us with 17 years of experience, 7 as a deputy fire chief from Loyalist Township. He's already been on the job for a week and several days and is busy working out grants and making his way through our systems. He is well versed in how we respond and our all procedural aspects of the job. So we welcome him to the town of Greater Napanee and our fire service.
I just want to take this time to thank Mayor, Council, Chief Hammond for taking the opportunity to hire me and faith in me and the CAO. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to many years with the town of Greater Napanee.
Thank you, Deputy Chief, and welcome to the town of Greater Napanee. I have to say, in a world and in a time where sometimes we hear a lot of negative things, I've not heard a negative word about your hiring or your position or your work ethic. So thank you for choosing the town of Greater Napanee, and let's hope that we can maybe talk in a few years about your retirement from the town of Greater Napanee. So thank you. We do have a motion on the floor. We have a bylaw 2023-0063 ready first, second, and finally passed. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And again, welcome, Deputy Chief. Information reports from members. And again, this is a new insert with respect to our agendas tonight. It provides members to provide a verbal or written information updates from external boards and or committees that they may be appointed to. Is there anybody that would like to go ahead, Councillor Norrie?
Yes, just from my Arts and Council committee, and I think it'll jump in with Councillor Hick's committee. Saturday is Cultural Days down and at Conservation Park starting at 10 when we have a opening prayer and drums, and then various artists playing throughout the day, as well as other surprises. And I believe there's lots going on downtown from her committee, which you might, but it's Saturday is going to be a full day downtown, good weather. So I invite all of council to go for a walk and say hi to everybody as well as the public.
Great, thank you, Councillor Norrie. And I expect it to be a well-attended event. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, did they not do it in past years as well?
Yes, and most of it is in Ward 5, just so Councillor Martin knows.
Thanks for noting that, Councillor Norrie. Is there anything else anyone wants to bring up with respect to their committees or anything like that? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, are we looking for a motion to note and receive, or are we just moving through? Perfect. Next up is inquiries, and inquiry is another new addition to our agendas. Inquiries are for members to make inquiries to staff on matters of general municipal concern. Responses may be provided verbally where the information is rarely known, or provided in writing as an information item on the next agenda. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns that anyone on council wants to direct towards staff that may or may not get answered tonight, but we most definitely will find an answer by the next meeting? Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
I do not expect an answer this evening. This is more of a friendly heads up that I will be submitting 2 E11 tickets for action on 2 properties within the town of Greater Napanee, specifically downtown. And it's to do with property standards. So just a heads up. I hope to get that done this week, but if not, you'll see it next week for sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hicks. Is there anything else under the inquiry tab here? Seeing none, notice the motions. Does anyone have any notice the motions for this evening? Seeing none, new business. Is there any new business anyone wants to speak to this evening? Seeing none, announcements. And again, this is another new tab under our agenda. Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Council had approved a raw water, I can't even pronounce that, raw water liner to go into the tank on top of Golf Course Hill. And that has recently been installed and is working fine. What people might not know, but a week ago, we had a water break in the line coming in from Lake Ontario. And we also had another main break of treated, that was raw water, and we had one of treated water. The raw water reservoir worked fantastically, and we were able to run at 75% water capacity. So most people, residents of town Napanee, did not notice what was going on. But I'd like to ask council to go ahead with me and thank the in-ground crew that worked hard to get these repairs done. Mark Corky, Justin Murray, and Jeff Hanna. And also I'd like to thank Sean Grant, who operates the water plant. And if I've forgotten anybody that happened to be on those jobs, I thank you as well. Thanks for your help.
Thank you, Councillor Pennell. And I know it was a fairly big task, and our staff actually dealt with it reasonably effortlessly. So they are to be commended, and thanks for bringing that up. Deputy Mayor Calvary.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Dave. He basically stole everything I had written down here. But it is my knowledge that they do have the raw water leak fixed. That got fixed rather quickly. We had, a couple of businesses here in town that were worked to help fix that problem, and our utilities guys were great throughout the whole thing. And like you say, most people would never even know that there was an issue, and that's due to the professionalism that we have working for us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Calvary. Is there anything further? Seeing none, we'll move on to the forward calendar. I know we've all had an opportunity to read it and see it. And I just want to bring everybody's attention that not only do we have the forward calendar, but we also have another document, which we've seen a little bit recently, which is our council resolution tracker, which I think is a very, very nice addition to this category on our agenda. So does anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns with respect to the forward calendar or the council resolution tracker? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to confirm the proceedings. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Shank. A bylaw to confirm this proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Greater Napanee. This 26th day of September 2023, read a first, second, and finally passed. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Hicks, seconded by Councillor Pennell. No further comments, questions, concerns. All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, folks. It's been a very productive evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.